Shall we begin? Sure. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Let me begin by telling you how I will structure this debate. I will be going across three important issues. The first of which is why should the government take this burden? Why take this extreme burden as they call it? Secondarily, I will be talking about the issue of whether it sustain that burden. Thirdly, I will be talking about the right to choose. And fourthly, ladies and gentlemen, I will be talking about the policy and the great flaws that exist therein. So, first of all, the issue of whether of sustainability and whether the government can sustain this burden, should it sustain this burden. So, the first question, whether the government should take up this burden. Ladies and gentlemen, we feel the provision of basic health care to be a fundamental basic need. We want that to be important, ladies and gentlemen. We want that to be registered, that no one in the country, ladies and gentlemen, should suffer for provision of inadequate basic health facilities, ladies and gentlemen. Under our model, we've made sure that the elective procedures or procedures that are not medically necessary, ladies and gentlemen, are not the burden of the government. So the government is not taking an undue burden. What it is taking is a necessary burden, ladies and gentlemen. Under our model, the government is only owning up to the provision of basic health. Basic health necessities, ladies and gentlemen, because we feel that to be the essential principle upon which we stand. We find that to be the essential ground, the essential job of the government, ladies and gentlemen. We find that no discrimination of whatever nature should be tolerated in this arena. Monetary considerations should not figure here. What we in fact are supporting, ladies and gentlemen, is that in our model, ladies and gentlemen, everyone is paying too much. In our model, even the rich are paying too much, and the reason why is because of the profit motive involved here. We see that in the provision of this basic facility, that should not be a consideration. We would have you believe, ladies and gentlemen, that no one should die because of this. No one should be denied medical care because of inadequacy of resources, ladies and gentlemen, or should be paying too much. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is the saving of lives that we are standing for, ladies and gentlemen, and we will not risk a single life in the US, ladies and gentlemen. That is the government's job, ensuring that, and therefore that's what we would want. Now, what is the benefits of what are the benefits under our model, and how we feel that the government can sustain this burden, ladies and gentlemen? The important thing that we have told you about this, under the present system, the government does not have adequate resource. When it purchases these facilities, ladies and gentlemen, that we've talked about, that exist in the private arena, ladies and gentlemen, it will now have access to that resource, A. Secondarily, ladies and gentlemen, it is increasing marginal taxation, ladies and gentlemen. It is increasing the tax insofar as it's needed, ladies and gentlemen. Thirdly, it is recruiting support from within the individual donors, ladies and gentlemen, that exist in the society, and have already pledged support, ladies and gentlemen, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And so we feel that all of these avenues for fund generation, and once the government has that resource at its disposal and its capacity to invest in economies of scale, ladies and gentlemen, it will be much more effective in dispensing healthcare much more equitably and much more just, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir.
Sir, would you rather put a large burden on all of your taxpayers, or just let the rich pay what they can afford to?
Well, we would not tolerate any form of discrimination, ladies and gentlemen. We've told you already, as far as basic health goes, we are not tolerant of any form of discrimination whatsoever. We will not allow you to have to suffer because of inadequate resource, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, under our model, because the profit motive is removed, ladies and gentlemen, and for several reasons that we've told you already in terms of economy, etc., we've told you that under our model, the sustainability is increased, ladies and gentlemen. These inefficiencies are removed because now the costs are only dependent upon what is needed, ladies and gentlemen, not on what is profitable, ladies and gentlemen. Here, the consideration centered only around the provision of basic health resources, ladies and gentlemen. Secondarily, ladies and gentlemen, the right to choice. Again, the same issue of right to choice trumping your right to basic facilities, ladies and gentlemen. We will not stand for a system or a society, ladies and gentlemen, where the rich are more capable of providing for their child's health, ladies and gentlemen, and ensuring a better and secure future, ladies and gentlemen, for their child in terms of health, as opposed to at the expense of the poor, ladies and gentlemen. Under our model, the government will be entrusted with what it is supposed to do, and what it is supposed to do is to ensure the health of every citizen that votes it in, ladies and gentlemen. And that is what President Obama promised, ladies and gentlemen. That is the principle for which we stood. We want him to reconsider his priorities, ladies and gentlemen. And under our model, because we're making it a matter of mandatory spending and not of discretionary spending, ladies and gentlemen, this is the mandated job of the government. So when recessions hit, ladies and gentlemen, when recessions happen, we say that governments are much more resilient to those recessions, ladies and gentlemen, than our private players, ladies and gentlemen. And so we want to make sure that because governments have more resources at their disposal, and because, as they've already conceded, economies hit, recessions have rippling effects across the economy, ladies and gentlemen, the first people to suffer are those these independent or private players, ladies and gentlemen. Governments are much more resilient because they have this vast amount of resources in the form of taxes.
On that very point, sir.
Sit down, man. So, thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, the will of the American people and how that's important. Now, for us, ladies and gentlemen, the essential consideration in terms of the will of the people, ladies and gentlemen, is the provision of the will of the people is evidence in just the provision of basic health, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what we want to ensure. And so, any discrimination that exists will not be tolerated, ladies and gentlemen. We want to make sure that these facilities provide adequate and across the board uniform facilities to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. The quality will improve because of the economic effects that we told you, ladies and gentlemen. And in the long run, of how the impact it will have on the economy as a whole, with healthier worker and a healthier workforce, ladies and gentlemen. We find that all of those are adequate grounds for why the government should enact this policy for economic interest and economic sense, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, go ahead.
Sir, you said that you stand for the right of everyone to have a basic healthcare system. We're not disagreeing. We're just saying, why should these 95% be devoted to a lower healthcare quality?
Well, we say that's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Under the present model, everyone is paying too much. You go to Cuba, ladies and gentlemen, you pay a lot less for the same medication. In fact, it's monumentally less, ladies and gentlemen. What we find in this particular case is that if the US was to reform itself along these lines, the profit margin will be eliminated from the equation. Everyone will be paying less, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone will have greater finances at their disposal and will have increased purchasing power as a result of it. So when they so their healthcare costs in the short term and the long term will decrease, and they will generally benefit from this, ladies and gentlemen. So everyone will benefit. The quality will increase, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason why is because all of this resource, when it is pooled into the government fund, will be able to will be subject to a lot more regulation, ladies and gentlemen. And so all of these corruptions and all of these problems that we've identified in the present system, such as the pharmaceutical industry providing you unduly influencing the doctors, ladies and gentlemen, we find that to be an important consideration. And regulation of the sort that we propose, where an independent commission which is forced to declare its financial interest with any pharmaceutical or any another manufacturing industry, we find that sort of regulation is only possible if the government appropriates complete control over the provision of basic healthcare. We will not have it subject to this form of manipulation or any form of corruption of this sort, ladies and gentlemen. And secondarily, we also feel that governments are a lot more accountable to their people. So in these societies, such as the US, ladies and gentlemen, the expectation of the people of the level of health that they expect, ladies and gentlemen, is much higher. Governments will be a lot more likely to respond to those pressures, ladies and gentlemen, because they are receptive to those pressures, and because they must be, of necessity must be, because they must seek accountability from the people and must again vote themselves in, ladies and gentlemen. And so, what have we told you about, what have they told us about their policy? The absolute lack of how they will procure funds, and the idea that they too will resort to the same means as us, suggests that they don't find a problem inherently in our model, and what they only disagree is the extent to which this should be done. And so what they don't realize is the basic fundamental nature of the provision of healthcare, and how that is the basic right that is being denied to a vast majority of people, let alone, and so as Mayor has already told you, we will not suffer even one individual suffering because of this, ladies and gentlemen. And so, in terms of all of this, ladies and gentlemen, about the bureaucracy issue, about all of these problems that exist within the government model, ladies and gentlemen, we find that those inefficiencies or inadequacies exist in all situations, ladies and gentlemen, not augmented in the government system. In fact, we feel that whatever limitations exist in the government system will still be humored because of the larger interest at stake, ladies and gentlemen, the saving of lives, ladies and gentlemen. And so once those resources are available to the government is much more likely to procure or to secure the health of its individuals, ladies and gentlemen. For all those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, we beg you strongly, of course, and we feel confident in our sentiment, ladies and gentlemen, that we take this beauty home again.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes 27 seconds.